My first question is, when did you first meet Carver?
I would say it's in the early 50s. I would say between 53 and 54. And the reason I remember that to be is my blind dog was born in 53. And I met Carver through Mr. Trahan and had many visits with him after that.
Now,
He became a friend.
Where did you first meet him? Where was that? Was that in
No, I first met him in Lafayette.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then he told us about a show that he was going to have and invited us up there. But I hadn't met him prior to that.
I guess so. Obviously, you had met his first wife.
Quite well. Neat looked cheap. Maurice was, when you had a gathering, he was the main attraction there. He was a very neat dresser, very good looking man, very handsome man. And I think the little lady you talking about, she was a very small person. Blonde, if I remember correctly.
Yes, yes. You don't recall her name?
No.
Okay. Do you know who took that particular picture? It's a cafe.
It was taken in Lafayette at the place they called Four Corners, and the restaurant was named Snacks. It was taken in Lafayette, Louisiana.
You have no idea who took that picture?
I would say probably Pete Sparks.
I guess, who would you say was Maurice's mentors?
Probably, if anybody, it would be Leo Comet from Meridian, Mississippi. Him and Leo were good friends.
Is it true that Jolly sold the dog Wino? That Maurice Carver, I think it was in Lafayette. There was a show, there was a convention, and he was handling the dog called Wino, and
Maurice handled Wino 3 times and he was very successful. The dog was from Mr. Jolly out of Devine, Texas.
Okay, all right, and they say that on the way back he had sold the dog, and on the way back going home that he would ride with him.
Mr. Jolly made Carver stop the vehicle and got down. That's true.
Okay, so you know that for a fact.
Yeah. Okay. When I first met Mr. Jolly, I met him in Cleveland, Mississippi. George Saturday had a show there, and Maurice and Jolly showed up. And probably a 1958 Thunderbird, red in color. And they had a black dog named Butch. And Butch jumped out of the car. And they had to chase him down in the cotton field on the headland. I witnessed it.
Were you riding with them or behind them?
No. We were just all out there. And it was at the show site.
Okay.
That's what it was. And he was parked not a little bit away. And you know how it is. I mean, it got everybody's attention real quick that the dog had got out. It didn't cause any problem, but they had to run him down the headland. And I can go furthermore. We had to push that car to get it started before they left. In other words, not that particular site, but at the motel they wouldn't crank. I remember it so vividly. It wouldn't start.
Now they say that Mayfield claims that the shows, everybody would stay at the motels and stuff like that. He says most of the time you would see there'd be people in the morning walking around talking amongst each other. He said that Maurice would come out of his hotel room and still wearing his PJs.
Yes.
And just scream about as loud as he could.
Yes, I witnessed that. He was a showman. So was Earl Tudor. They were the life of the party.
Now he'd just be screaming.
Carver had stories on the end. You know, he was in the military and did a good job, I understand. And he did a lot of different things. And he really, because I was young at the time and listened a lot. Carver had some hell of a stories. Yes. Interesting man.
Can you describe his second wife, Pat?
I knew Pat probably best out of the two. I met Pat when she was very young.
Before she was married to?
No, she was married to Maurice at the time.
Okay.
But she was young. I've known Maurice and Pat for quite some time.
How much age difference was there between?
Pretty good margin, but I couldn't say how many years. But
Give or take a few, 5, 10, 15?
I would say maybe more like 20.
Wow, okay.
You know, maybe somewhere along in there, maybe a little bit less, but a pretty good margin. Maybe I say this because Maurice looked a little tired, and Pat was already young and in her prime and rosy cheeks, you know.
Who would you say was the better? Who would you like better of the two?
It's a little hard to say. The first lady had a lot of class. Very short, very neat, good looking, very snappy dresser. And Pat was a little more kicked back a little bit, you know, more like us guys, in other words. She blended in maybe a little better with the dog people. I enjoyed Pat. She had a nice dog too. That stomping out the dog was hers, and she raised that from a pup. And I think he went on to have pretty good luck with him.
Is it true that she ran away with Maurice's yard?
Yes,
Help?
Mr. Stevens.
Dave Stevens.
Yeah. They came to Lafayette, Pat and Stevens, with a friend that I had, Richard Fisher from the Bayou. And Richard had purchased a dog from them named Scrap-On. And they had a little show there. And Pat really went overboard and extended the wagering part way too much. And when this show was over, she couldn't ante up the money. Mr. Stevens left her on the site. I witnessed. He drove up and left.
Now I always thought that, yeah.
She had to get a ride to get home.
Wow. What can you tell me about Maurice's yard help? I mean, did it change over the years? Did you?
Yeah, pretty much. Maurice had a nice yard, and he was on the hill as well, as you know. And I visited that place several times. He had a lot of people that would raise dogs for him. And some he would farm out and get back after they were grown. But he had several people that would just breed them up for him. He was very successful in the dogs. Made a lot of champions, a lot of grand champions.
Would you say he always had yard help, or it varied from time to time?
I've always seen yard help there.
Anybody else besides Dave Stevens that would come into mind? Because I have no record, or there's really nothing about his yard help.
The gentleman that I'm trying to name is a gentleman that walks with a limp. I know the man's name, he just won't come to me.
And how long do you think he stayed on with him?
Probably the longest. But a lot of people have went in and out of that estate, including Mr. Bobby Hall, stayed there quite some.
As far as going to his place, was he always at the same place along that highway?
That's it. That's the only place I've known of. In other words, that's the only place we visited. He always talked about the big house on the hill, but we never went there. We always stayed at the, I wouldn't know what to call it. I guess it was his
That little hill.
college, I guess you would say, but that's where we all stayed.
For somebody that Never seen his yard. Can you describe his yard?
From the road, the house was to the right, and the dogs were to the left, and they would go pretty far back. I don't recall, but he had several dogs at all times. And he kept his dogs in good shape. His dog was always healthy.
Seen him on cables.
Yes.
Cable runs.
Yes.
Okay. How many dogs would you say he kept at any given time, or when
About
you
35.
went? How many?
About 35. I don't witness any more than that. He may have had more at one time or another, but I didn't see that.
Well, what can you tell me about that Black Widow Gypsy?
She was, so I was told, that she was really an outstanding female. She was black in color, had a scar on her right cheek, about an inch long, and a very good looking dog. Mr. Gaboon Trahan bought her from Carver, brought it to Lafayette, and Mr. Trahan ran a boarding house at the time. And someone in Mr. Carver's group took her from Mr. Trahan one night and brought her back to Carver. And that's when Carver made the mating with Dido. But actually the owner would have been Mr. Trahan.
Is that where she died? Was on Maurice's yard because she was never recovered?
I would think so. No, she never came back to Lafayette.
Well, some say that she ended up some way back on Earl Tudor's yard.
Well, she may have. No, I couldn't say that. She may have. That I don't recall. Wish I could be of more help with that, but I can't.
Are you familiar with, there's a story, I've actually took it out and got the newspaper clipping, but there was that thing where Maurice Carver killed a man in self-defense.
Yes, I recall that, yes. Matter of fact, after that incident, he moved in with Leo Kennard.
He moved in with Leo Kennard?
Yeah, at Meridian, Mississippi, and Leo was a bootlegger at the time, ran liquor, and Carver helped him with that. And I don't recall how long Carver stayed, but he did stay there some time, because I visited them both there.
Well, speaking of his,
So that,
so would you say those were amongst his closest friends?
yes, I would think Leo and Maurice and then Jerome Hernandez and the gentleman from Lake Charles, Roland Fontenot. Yeah.
I believe he just passed
Yeah,
away,
there
didn't
was Roland Fontenot, Jerome, Jimmy Wimberly, and Earl. It was a pretty good group. They did well.
Can you describe Maurice, in case you never seen him? How would he be dressed at these shows?
Well, at home, he did like Bobby Hall. He was rarely out of his pajamas. He wore some very fancy silk pajamas with his initials on them, you know. And when he did go out in public, just very neat, very rich looking. He was a handsome man. Always stayed well kept when he was in public. Now at home, it was a different story. He stayed in pajamas a lot. Too much, really.
Pajamas and boots.
Pardon?
Pajamas and boots.
That's it. Yep. Yep.
On your visits to his place, did he in fact have his PJs on?
Yes. Now he did change to come outside on occasions. You know, when we went out and look at the dogs, he would change. But 80% of the time he was in them PJs, but that was his style.
But they Like Mayfield once told me, he was basically, his signature was the cowboy boots and that Stetson hat.
That's it. He described him well.
Okay. How about, nobody could ever remember what he'd smoked. Remember his brand of cigarettes?
No. I think, talking about smokes, Lee O'Connor had the best setup. He had all brands of cigarettes, all brands of cigars. And I've noticed that Carver would switch from one brand to another. But at home, I really couldn't say because I personally never did smoke, so I didn't I focused more on the dogs. That's what I was there for.
You ever do any breedings?
Pardon?
You ever do any breedings or trade any dogs with Maurice?
No, but I gave him several dogs. I gave him several, and so that I gave Leo several.
Did he ever give you any?
No. He came home to breed, though. He bred to my blind dog. He brought up. He was, at the time, had a friend that was high up in the Air Force, and I don't recall the rank. But that gentleman had a buckskin female that called a North Tilapia to breed to the blind dog and produced, I think he called it Blondie, and I forget the male dog's name. Got away from it right now.
Okay.
The last thing I did for Maurice was I gave him a little red female that I had raised in a blacksmith shop to give to a friend of his. He had a friend, Mr. Maurice Coyne, who was a chicken man. And the little red female was a full sister of Spook that I gave Jerry Clements, which was Bodison in small.
Hey, you mentioned the chickens. What can you tell me about the chickens? Nobody can really tell me that much about.
Well, Maurice had some nice chickens. The last breed of chickens he had was some white chickens. Now you was asking about Maurice's chicken?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, he was a good chicken man. Him and Jolly both. They won a lot of derbies. And the last chickens were white, and I'd like to. I know the name of the chicken. It just got away from me.
Okay.
I can't think of it.
Would he have a lot of chickens at his place?
No. No. Didn't keep a lot of chickens. Not that I witnessed.
If you can go back and breed to any of those Carver dogs, not your own, Carver dog, I'm just interested to hear what you were
Pardon me? I didn't know of any true Carver dog that he had. It was, because he would switch. Whatever was hot at the time, he would get on that bandwagon. There was whatever was popular. And I wish I could tell you more about his dogs, but I can't. I could fabricate something, but it's not necessary. I think what made him the most famous towards the end was poor Bullison, I guess. You know, he bred him a lot and had a lot of good luck with him. And at the end, mistreated Bullison again. Should have never brought him up.
We're going to hit that topic.
Okay, go ahead. I'm through with that.
Okay. There's a lot of people say he was a drinker, but I don't think anybody I've ever talked to say they ever seen him intoxicated.
Ever seen him what?
Intoxicated.
No, I've never seen that either.
Okay. So he was just
I can honestly say, all the time that we visited, he's always been very alert. Very alert. Didn't miss a stroke.
One thing I can't find or put a finger on his occupation, Maurice's occupation, or besides selling dogs. I'm talking about, did he ever do anything for a living that you might have known about?
He told me once, like when you first started the dogs, he started the dogs after the Second World War. He started about in 46. And his brother was in the construction business, heavy machinery. So I think Carver was an operator. And then he told me at one time that he had a job for the government, if I understand correctly, something like the hook and mouth disease in cattle. And I can't say any more about that besides, I think he worked, if I understand correctly what he told us was, it was something to do with the border and cattle and the hook and mouth disease. That's about the extent of that. The time I've known him, I've never known him to work.
Okay.
Because he'd come to Lafayette and stayed 2 weeks at a time. And the time he stayed at stayed at Leo's. He wasn't working then.
Now, when I hear the stories about him being a salesman, what can you say about Maurice as a salesman?
He was a great salesman. He's the gentleman that would tell you what you wanted to hear, and as soon as you told him what you were looking for, he had it. He may have had more than this, but he may have had a dozen puppies in a pen. And whatever you asked him for, he would go in and catch one and say, this is it.